In the cold, deep recesses of the North Pacific, a shadowy mast glides along the floor of a blue, iridescent universe. An underworld giant known to reach 8 feet in length and to weigh over 500 pounds. The Pacific halibut. A fish surrounded in myth and legend, hunted for feast and profit. It can live as long as 40 years and travels in an enigmatic odyssey between the Bering Sea and Northern California. All the while pursued by man in their mutual quest for survival. The world above being a mirror projection of that below. Native Americans have fished for halibut from before recorded time. Halibut became part of their mythology. The catch was sacred, treated with the reverence of a mystical being. This macaw family song and dance was created centuries ago. It tells the story of a young Indian who falls asleep in his canoe. In his dream, he hears the song. The beat wakes him up, and he catches the largest halibut ever. Using canoes and their hook and line techniques, they would venture as far as 20 miles from shore, searching for the best fishing grounds. Their hooks were fashioned from crooked branches of cedar, anticipating today's circle hooks. The wooden hooks were attached to lines made of red cedar bark or stretched kelp, 60 fathoms long. Bender Johnson has been a fisherman since he was 16 years old in 1932.
We fished, you know, in small canoes. Some of them were all around about 16 feet, and they were dug right out of cedar trees, and to me they were pretty dependable.
Huey Smith began fishing with his grandfather in 1907.
Maybe about 10, 15 canoes from the village here, all out on swift shore banks in them early days. When the tide changed and the wind come up, westerly wind, somebody would holler, go home, you know, then everybody quit fishing, they sailed together in case someone got in trouble going home.
Just as the Indian fishermen depicted halibut in their own mythology, commercial fishermen today treat the fishery with their own religious celebration. The annual blessing of the fleet is a Norwegian custom reaching back 100 years to the beginnings of the commercial halibut fishery. Dr. Don McCochran, director of the International Pacific Halibut Commission, reflects back on the history of the fishery.
Halibut fishing, as you know, started in 1888. Started off the coast of Washington here and gradually moved up into British Columbia, looking for new stocks as they went up into Alaska, the Central Gulf, and then finally out as far as the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. And by about 1915, the stocks were in rather poor condition. At least it was more difficult to catch halibut. And fishermen decided, this group here, some of the forefathers of this group, decided that something should be done about it.
And now the Lord bless you and keep you, and the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Amen.
Many lives have been lost in the battle of this dangerous pursuit, and the Norwegian custom requests a safe journey and good fishing as the fleet heads north. The roots of today's modern fishery reaches back to the 1880s, when the New England sailing vessels began fishing off Cape Flattery. Two-man dories were carried to the fishing grounds. The fishermen, braving fierce weather and dangerous seas, filled their dories with halibut and delivered their catch to the larger vessels. The fish were brought into one of the major railhead ports, like Prince Rupert or Seattle, and eventually shipped back east. The early halibut fishermen were often of Norwegian ancestry, with Newfoundlanders and Nova Scotians also involved. Many second and third generation families continue the cycle, changing with modern techniques, yet still living a tradition. The two-masted schooner Polaris was built over 75 years ago, and while modernized, it still connects today's fishermen with the pioneering days of the past.
Also, I've got a plotter, which is probably one of
Wade
the most
Bassey, skipper of the Polaris, reflects back on his family
really
tradition.
makes a difference. When my dad was fishing back then, all they had was a compass and a clock. And that's how they set their courses and found their grounds. They had a lead weight that they used to drop down instead of a fathom here. So I just flick a switch and I find out what it took him, you know, sometimes up to an hour to find out. So it's quite a bit different from the old days. So I don't know, it makes it a lot easier on us running the boats. It's just about that anybody can come out and do it fairly easy now, because we've got all this electronic help, where before we really depended more on the knowledge of what they knew and how they, you know, how they got around everything. So it's changed a lot.
Today's fishermen are not easily classified. Coming from varied backgrounds, they are fierce competitors intent upon the work they pursue. The fishermen work long, hard hours, going day and night without sleep during the short 1 or 2 day openings. And fishing doesn't stop during bad weather or high seas. The fishermen continue for days in conditions that would send most to shore after only a few hours. Always in danger of injury or even loss of life, they work for their share of the boat's profits, sometimes substantial, sometimes not. But beyond that, they fish because they are fishermen.
They say it's in the blood, and I believe it. I really do, because I really like it. You know, I'd have a tough time giving it up.
Well, it's not as romantic as it seemed when I first looked at it from the outside. It's a lot of hard work.
I've only been on the boat about 2.5 months. And these last 2.5 months, the way I feel right now, I feel like I'll probably be here anywhere from 5 to 10 years. Hopefully be a skipper one day.
They sleep and eat for months in cramped, claustrophobic quarters. It's tight, both mentally and physically.
You know, you live on this boat for half a year, you know, and for half a year you live with, well, on here we live with 5 other guys, and if you don't get along with them, it can be a long half a year.
Commercial halibut fishing uses longline gear. This consists of a ground line of about 1,800 feet. Short ganyons, or branch lines, each with a baited hook, are attached to the ground line every 15 to 30 feet. This string is called a skate. Usually 3 to 10 skates are tied together to form a set. The hooks are baited with a variety of foods, salmon, octopus, and herring being commonly used. The traditional J-hook has been replaced in the 1980s by the circle hook, which has shown over twice the efficiency of the J-hook. The ground line, or skate, with baited hooks, is set over the chute at the stern, held to the bottom with an anchor, and marked with a buoy. Most halibut fishing is in depths between 90 and 900 feet. Several hours after setting his skates, the captain hauls in his catch, which is cleaned and iced while he maneuvers for another set. Traditional longline gear is hauled aboard on a power-driven wheel, the gurdy. One fisherman controls the gurdy and lands the fish, while the other coils the line. Snap-on gear was introduced during the 1950s. The ganyons are attached with metal snaps to the ground line as the gear is played out. A highliner today will catch as much as 100,000 pounds of fish in a 24-hour period. Boats range from 20-foot skiffs to 90-foot state-of-the-art longliners. Life for the Pacific halibut begins in the darkness at the bottom of the sea. While fierce winter storms rage above, below, in calmer, deeper waters, spawning begins. Mature females of about 12 years or older release from 500,000 to 4 million eggs at sites from the coast of British Columbia to the Bering Sea. The eggs drift at depths of 300 to 600 feet. With growth, there is a change in their specific gravity, and the larvae drift toward the surface to feed and grow in the shallow waters off the continental shelf, the nursery ground of the sea. In approximately 15 days, a tiny tadpole-like larva develops that will travel thousands of miles in the ocean currents. The larvae begin life in an upright position with an eye on each side of their head. But after 1 month, a mysterious change takes place. The left eye migrates to the right side of the head. The right side darkens, leaving the fish with a blind white underside, particularly well suited for life at the bottom of the sea. At about 6 months, the baby halibut begin their bottom-dwelling existence. This period is critical, with only a brief time allotted by nature to find a suitable environment. The currents must carry the larvae into the shallow waters of bays, rock reefs, and kelp forests with plentiful food and shelter, away from the dangerous deeper waters they will inhabit when mature. The mature Pacific halibut, dark gray, both eyes on the right side, averages from 3 to 7 feet and 40 to 250 pounds, although giants up to 8 feet and over 500 pounds have been recorded. They are the largest of all flatfish. The females grow faster than the males. Few males will reach 80 pounds, while most halibut over 100 pounds are female. They feed on anything they can fit into their vacuumous mouths: small fish, crab, shrimp, and sometimes even baby halibut. They not only feed on the sea bottom, but travel up to feed on pelagic fish such as herring and sandlance. A survivor in the drama of the sea. Yet earlier in this century, the future of the halibut fishery was alarmingly close to ending. A declining trend in the abundance and survival of juvenile halibut began to show up in the 1910s and 20s. As more halibut were taken, sharp drops in the harvest became evident. Something was seriously wrong. The director of the International Pacific Halibut Commission, Dr. Don McCochran.
Before 1920, halibut fishermen realized that there was something the matter with the stocks. Probably overfishing was causing a reduction in their catches, and they asked the governments for some kind of control. That's kind of surprising since, as everybody knows, halibut fishermen are very independent, strong-willed people, and not really inclined to having a lot of rules and regulations, but they in fact recognized the need. If they were going to maintain a good fishery, there had to be some controls put on that fishery. Some conservation-based regulations had to come into being. And the fishermen themselves asked for the formation of a regulatory body whose prime objective is to set conservation goals for the preservation of the resource. In 1923, a treaty was formed between the United States and Canada. The International Fisheries Commission was formed then, later on changed to the International Pacific Halibut Commission. The Halibut Commission has been very successful in rebuilding those stocks and to maintain those stocks, and we have a very fine example of good, sound resource management.
Since 1930, the industry has become one of the most rigidly managed and successful fisheries in the world, due largely to the efforts of the International Pacific Halibut Commission with the cooperation of the fishermen. The annual catch since the 1930s has been 21 to 75 million pounds. Yet other problems continue. The United States halibut fleet from Northern California to the Bering Sea has risen to over 6,000 boats in the 1980s. Licenses are unrestricted, and anyone with a boat is free to fish. This large influx has caused limited openings of just 24 hours, so stocks would not be depleted. So the fishermen gamble with both profit and safety. The competition is severe, the danger high. Most boats work independently, day and night, filling their holds with upwards of 70,000 pounds of fish.
Basically, these halibut are nothing but muscle, so they beat you pretty bad. I'm all bruised, my hands are all swollen, I'm really sore. It takes a lot out of you. I mean, when you get done after that 24 hours, when the sun comes back up, you're just thanking the Lord that you're still there and still fighting them.
In Canada, we see a much different fishery from the United States. The Canadian fishery is under limited entry. There are only about 430 licenses available for halibut boats, so the industry is very stable. They produce a high-quality product, and without short, one-day openings, a safer fishery. Prince Rupert, British Columbia, until recently has been the largest halibut landing port in the world. With the head of the Transcontinental Railroad located here since 1914, this town has remained a major halibut center for over 70 years. Today, Kodiak, Alaska is the halibut capital of the world. With millions of pounds of halibut moving through this picturesque town every year. There is a frenzy of activity as the fishermen bring their catch into the docks at Kodiak. The fishermen usually sell directly to the processor, offering the highest price. The processing plants will quickly empty the boats and begin the careful process of handling the valuable fish. Inside the plants, the fish move steadily down efficient processing lines. They are beheaded and washed thoroughly, while quality control inspectors constantly check the fish to ensure the highest quality product. The fish are then sold, either fresh or frozen, to markets around the world. The International Pacific Halibut Commission is intently involved in all aspects of the relationship of the fish and the fishermen. And it is through their scientific research that the future of this fishery is reflected. A scientific staff collects the data needed to manage the Pacific halibut fishery. An essential piece of data is the age of the halibut. Its age is determined from the otolith, an irregular-shaped tiny bone in the internal ear that acts as a balancing organ. Each otolith contains rings, a yearly record of the halibut's growth. The commission biologists take samples from over 40,000 halibut each year. The information is used in assessing the abundance and migratory patterns of the halibut. Over a period of time, a year class of halibut can be traced throughout its life, giving essential information such as mortality rate, which is used to scientifically manage the resource. Field biologists from the commission collect logbook information from the fishermen on their catch. Along with port sampling, biologists conduct scientific cruises on chartered vessels. These surveys use longline and trawl gear to provide a further analysis of the stock conditions. The tagging of halibut for age, growth, and migration studies represented one important aspect of this cruise. The fish are tagged, then released. Some of these fish will migrate from the Bering Sea to as far down as northern California. The other purpose of this trip was to collect a large sample of otoliths. Cal Blood, a Halibut Commission field biologist, explains the project.
We've collected about 1,000 otoliths from the Polaris trip. So we're going to take the halibut otolith and weigh it. And once we get the weight, then we can have a prediction of the fish length and fish weight. Once we have that relationship, then we're going to take the actual fish lengths and fish weights and compare them. And we're going to look at the variability between the actual and the predicted lengths. It's a relationship that we've used since the 1960s and is a foundation of our sampling program.
Another type of research is being developed at the United States Fish and Wildlife Laboratory on Marrowstone Island, Washington. Using spawning and incubation techniques developed in Norway, the early development of the halibut larvae is being studied. Stan Smith, director of the Marrowstone Research Project.
The project we're dealing with here, as you're already aware, is a Pacific halibut rearing study. And what we've tried to do is bring in adult halibut that are fairly mature, raise them through one season, spawn the females, fertilize the eggs with male sperm, and try to rear the young. The particular fish you've seen here were caught on a charter boat, the Satin Doll, which has been chartered by the International Pacific Halibut Commission. The fish were caught in 35 to 40 fathoms of water with rod and reel, such as a sport fisherman would do, brought aboard the boat very gently, put into the live box you've seen on the boat. They're then transported by hand into the bed of a pickup truck. We then haul the fish down to the laboratory and put them here in the tank, where later we will spawn and rear the young.
A major problem that the International Pacific Halibut Commission is continually monitoring, which is becoming more crucial to the continued viability of the fishery, is bycatch, or the inadvertent capture of halibut during other types of fishing. Trawlers that drag in thousands of pounds of fish in giant nets are of special concern. While many are like this boat, with catches that are free of unwanted fish and the fishermen alert to the problems of bycatch, there are others who are less responsive to this growing problem. If juvenile halibut are taken incidentally in these enormous nets, the future of the fishery can be affected for years to come. The professional fisherman sees the hunt as a way of life. But to the sport fisherman, a halibut can be the giant trophy from the sea. Hundreds of charters go out in search of this fish up and down the west coast of North America, and the thrill of bringing in a bottom-dwelling beast on rod and reel that can reach into the hundreds of pounds lures any sport fisherman.
I've always been a long liner. I heard my dad talk about it when I was a little kid. Once you start fishing it, it kind of gets into your blood.
Halibut fishing up on is real intense type fishing. It's just constantly going. The fish are fighting you, you're fighting the fish. It's kind of a love-hate type situation.
You go down every fisherman that's fishing and you ask them that and they'll say they'll hate it, but deep down they do like it because it's too many hardships and too hard to work and too long hours and too big a grind, you know, for them to not like it some, or they just wouldn't do it. You know, no matter how much they got paid, they wouldn't do it.
It's not for everybody. You really have to love this work in order to do it.
For 100 years now, commercial fishermen have searched the deep, cold waters for the Pacific halibut. The fish travel in a world of mystery and danger, their journey marked by the steady drone of diesels, the fishermen above, the fish below, all taking life from the sea.